You're listening to Smart Moves with your hosts, Ann Riley Caldwell and Matt Wilson.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Moves podcast, where today we're going to talk about assumable loans. So the question is, could you buy a home and take over a current seller's mortgage rate that would be lower than today's mortgage rate instead of getting a brand new loan and or paying a higher rate? That's the basic idea behind what an assumable mortgage is. So today we're going to break down how it works, when it makes sense, and why it's not as simple as it sounds, because nothing ever is. But anyway, welcome to the Smart Moves podcast. I'm Ann Riley Caldwell, not your ordinary agent, local realtor here in Middle Tennessee, and with my co-host Matt Wilson, branch manager and loan officer at New American Funding, who covers all of Tennessee and some other states too, if you're interested. So anyway, today we're going to hop on in and we're going to talk about assumable mortgages, because obviously as rates go higher, people long for those days when rates were like between 2 and 4% in particular, maybe even 5%. So sometimes we get questions about, hey, can I just assume a seller's mortgage? And sometimes when you look at the MLS, there'll be a note that says that this mortgage is potentially assumable. And so obviously people get excited about that, which is not a bad thing to check on. But Matt's going to start us off by telling us what an assumable mortgage actually is.
Well, let's just start off with the point of this podcast is, you know what they say about assumptions. So anyway, there we go. I got the bad joke out of the way.
Never make assumptions about assumable loans.
There you go. And if you don't know what I was just talking about, Google it or ask your dad. There you go. If you don't know that, then you're probably not old enough to buy a house to begin with. So the whole point of an assumption is to put you in the position where you can take over somebody else's loan. It's a question that a lot of people ask me because obviously, buying a house with a 5 to 6.5% rate like you would at the time of this recording is a lot less appealing than buying one with a 2.99 or 3 that you could have had 6 years ago if you had done it then. Here's the big thing there. First off, the only kinds of loans that could be assumed are government loans. Conventional loans cannot. So, I have seen some kind of false advertising where somebody somewhere misunderstood, but Fannie and Freddie will not allow you to assume a mortgage. The next thing is the big problem that I've seen is that finding somebody that qualifies properly to assume the mortgage is like finding a needle in a haystack. So if you do have a government loan where it could be assumed by somebody else and you've got a really good interest rate, it is a good marketing point potentially, but it's probably not going to create the buying frenzy that you think it might. What I mean by that is, let's just imagine for a minute that you bought a house in 2020 and the home was $300,000 then, but now it's 2026 and you're selling it for $550, give or take, whatever. That's cool. In that time frame, you've probably, even if you financed at 100% financing, you've probably paid yourself down to $280 or something like that. So you're doing pretty good. The problem is you're also sitting at like a 50% loan to value. If somebody assumes that loan, that means they're going to have to come in with the roughly 50% as a down payment. So that's problem A, is finding somebody whose down payment expectations line up exactly with what assuming your mortgage is going to look like. The second problem that you run into with assumptions is when you're doing a purchase and you're talking to a mortgage guy such as myself or a real estate agent such as Ann Riley, the thing is you're looking at having a bunch of people in your corner that really want to get the deal done quickly for you, assuming it's a good deal and inspections and everything go well, because everybody gets paid at the same time. We all win together. When it comes to an assumption, you're dealing with the servicing department for whatever mortgage company currently is servicing the loan that the seller's got. They're already getting monthly payments on it, and they could give two craps if those payments are coming from that guy or you after you have to make them do a bunch of paperwork. So all that to say, they're not exactly motivated in the same way to get that done quickly. In most cases that I've heard about, because this is a servicing side thing, like I personally have never done an assumption because it's after it's left my hands that's the type of thing that would be a problem to deal with. But from what I've heard, 90 days is probably your average closing time on something like that. Now, that may be worth it to you, but I mean, you could speak at How do you think that offer compares to somebody that's not assuming the mortgage from the agent's perspective?
60 plus days less to get it done. It's not going to make it a very viable offer unless the seller truly understands what all that means ahead of time, and not just a listing agent said, hey, I've got a great marketing idea to try to get eyeballs on this, and doesn't understand all the stuff that has to happen behind the scenes, which is unfortunately very possible. And then also, I mean, if the seller's not in a hurry, or the seller doesn't need to be anywhere for 3 months, which sometimes is the case, then I suppose it could be worth it. But I would say that's only if somebody's making you an awesome offer, or you're just not getting any other offers. It's kind of like, it's like taking a contingency on your house, like a sale of home contingency, and the buyer has to sell their house before they can buy your house, and it's a big question mark, in a somewhat slower market as to how long all that's going to take. So it's kind of the same thing. I guess it's sort of a contingency, because all that's having to happen behind the scenes, kind of, because obviously the financing always has to come through, but now you're putting 3 times kind of the normal time frame on top of something. So
yeah, and in my experience, that's 3 times longer for somebody to go buy a car or do something stupid and screw everything up for everybody.
Lose their job, screw it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The longer you wait, the more things that can happen.
For sure. Yeah, and so they can be beneficial. Now, the other thing that I see in a lot of cases is people will ask me, well, Matt, if I assume this loan and I've got to come up with the other 50%, well, what if I do it and I get like a home equity loan or some other version of a second mortgage? You totally can. But then you need to weigh out, is that going to actually net you out a lower overall interest rate? And is it going to net you out a lower overall payment? Or is the juice even worth the squeeze at that point? Because a lot of those second mortgages are not going to be at a particularly great interest rate. And there's a lot of them that are going to be at a shorter term than 30 years. So, you can look at that, but it's not exactly a slam dunk unless you just happen to be planning to put 50% down in this scenario. Obviously, every scenario is slightly different, but, that's a pretty common numbers that I see for somebody who bought a house 6 years ago in Middle Tennessee. The other factor is, like on VA loans, there's also some things to consider. I'll talk first to the veteran. Like if you're selling a house and you're throwing out there that your loan can be assumed to help market it, that's cool. There's a couple of problems there, though. First off, if the purchaser is not a veteran, your entitlement is tied up right there, or part of your entitlement is tied up right there on that house, and it can't be transferred to them, so that entitlement stays tied up forever, basically, or until it's paid off, or way down the road. And if you think they're going to pay off a 3% interest rate anytime soon, joke's on you, probably.
So before you go any further, for people who don't know what an entitlement is, can you sort of explain that a little bit, and what it is and what it has to do with the veteran and their VA loan?
Yeah, when you get a VA loan, basically what's happening there is the VA is insuring the loan up to 25% of the loan to value. That's what allows you to not put a down payment down on it, because from a lender's perspective, it's a 75% loan, which makes it pretty safe and secure. You get entitlement based on the county loan limit, or the conforming limit of each county in America. Google it. It changes in every county, so it's going to be variable wherever you're at. With that being said, let's just pretend for a second it's $1 million. That means overall, 25% of $1 million is $250,000. So you get $250,000 to put down towards your down payment effectively for that 25%. So you could, if it's $1 million, have 2 $500,000 houses and not put any money down, or one $1 million house, or 4 $250,000. Do your own math. That what that does, though, is, like, let's say that you had a $500,000 entitlement tied up, then you've only got half for the next house, and everything over that you're putting down a down payment yourself. So just make sure, if you're planning on buying the next house and trying to keep the down payment to a minimum, make sure that's going to fit mathematically with letting somebody else assume it. Now, if somebody else is also a veteran, that's off the table. You can transfer it where that's on their entitlement at that point. So in the ideal situation for a VA loan, you would sell to another veteran. But that is a thing. Like, I've had clients in the past that had previous VA loans, and they were advertising that, and they really had to do some soul searching to decide if it was worth it to them whenever they were getting offers. They planned on using that assumption.
Is that what a substitution of entitlement is, by any chance?
Yep. That's the industry, like, specific term for all the words I just said.
Okay. Just asking. It was a question on my piece of paper, so as you were talking, I'm like, I bet that's what that is, but I should ask. In case anybody else comes across the term substitution of entitlement as they're doing their Google or ChatGPT or whatever research you would like to do to just confuse yourself even more.
Yeah, hit that SEO score. That way they can find it. Because honestly, that's one of those words we don't. Right. That's one of those words we don't use a lot, and I try to just explain what it actually means instead of saying, something that may as well be French to somebody.
Well, now we just taught them French, so they're much smarter than they were when they first came onto this podcast.
Oui. So that's all I got for you in French.
Okay. I don't even have that much. Bonjour, is that a French word?
Hey, there we go. All right. Come back for French 201 next week, everybody.
We'll come up with 2 French words every week moving forward, just so you can come back and learn some French. Probably better off teaching Spanish, but that's okay. So overall, what questions should a seller sort of be asking before they decide? I mean, obviously the 90 days would probably be a shocker. You talked about the fact, tying up their entitlement. Is there anything else that they should think about if they're okay with those 2 things?
Well, the other factor is I would probably still want to see a pre-approval letter just for a regular loan to begin with, just to make sure that they're probably going to qualify to start with. Because they still have to qualify for that other loan whenever they get it. Or if they're getting 2 loans, to cover the shortfall in the down payment, then they've got to qualify for 2 loans at once. So it's not like just because you've got somebody that can assume your loan that they don't have to qualify in the traditional mortgage sense too. Both have to happen at the same time. So definitely still require a pre-approval letter in my opinion. And if they are not planning on doing a second, I would get proof of funds personally if I were selling my house, and make sure that they have the means to cover that large down payment that it's probably going to be. Because let's face it, like, unless you put down a lot of money here recently, in which case, it's possible that you weren't on an FHA or a VA loan in a lot of cases, there's going to be a ton of equity there just because the home value went up. Because nobody that bought the house 2 years ago has an interest rate that you care to assume, I promise you. It's not going to do you that much.
Well, and that's the thing is, one of the things we try to explain to people is it all depends upon multiple factors, one of which is your personal situation, and what you can do, want to do, whether it makes sense for you to do it, whether you're on the selling side or the buying side, and then also obviously what's going on in the market. So you're looking at what are interest rates now compared to the interest rate on this mortgage that you want to assume. You're looking at, in this instance, just because of the crazy stuff that happened 4 to 6 years ago now, whatever year we're in now, when there were so many multiple offers and, prices skyrocketed over the course of 18 to 24 months, assumable mortgages are not as viable as they may have been previously. Hopefully they're not super viable moving forward, because that means interest rates went up way higher than they are right now, but who knows. So, you really have to be looking at what happened in the market with the equity in the homes at the times that we're talking about. Because there could be times, particularly in the past, maybe in the future, where assuming something, because the equity has not skyrocketed over sort of that same course of time, it could make more sense than it likely makes now. So anyway, that's why we have to just look at everything, because, there's no way that there's not built up a significant amount of equity in these loans that we're talking about when people got them at 2 to 4%. So it's not been a normal market, as we're all aware, for like the last 6 years or so. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, don't go into an assuming things, because there's an awful lot of moving parts there, and it can be successful. It can be a great thing financially, but hopefully through what we discussed here today, it puts you in a better frame of mind of what it's going to take to get there, so that you're not thinking, hey, I'm magically going to get this house and pay what it would have been a few years ago had I not been screwing around or in high school or something then, instead of buying a house. So, you know, it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox. But, you know, when you got a hammer, everything doesn't necessarily turn into a nail, in spite of the fact you may want to hit it with a hammer.
I know, right? So Matt loves it when I ask these crazy questions, but this is how my head thinks. So if there's a loan and somebody comes in and they actually assume it, so now they're the second owner of this house, they've assumed this loan, can they turn around and have somebody assume that loan when they sell their house? Can we have a double assumption? Is that like a key SEO term? I don't know. Is there such a thing?
I don't know. You're the first one to ask me that question.
These are the things that I think about at 1 a.m. when I can't sleep. I don't know where I come up with them.
Yeah, I personally am going to have to give that a Google myself here. I don't want to break my own rule and assume that you can.
I think that'd be pretty crazy, though, especially if it wasn't a veteran. Like if there's a non-veteran in the middle of that equation, because then that would continue to tie up the original person's entitlement, correct?
Yes. And I would just... one place that you can assume is that if you've given up your entitlement, that it's just gone. Like, don't count on that piece of it coming back. Could it technically? Sure. It could be restored, but I would not make the decision to do the assumption from the selling end thinking that it will be restored. You need to make your plans around it not ever getting restored.
Yeah, the one reason I asked that question is because I have had a seller who did assume a VA loan who was not a veteran. So then when he was trying to sell it, we weren't trying to necessarily get it assumed by anybody, but that's where I had the thought of like, okay, could there be like a second assumption? So anyway, I don't know. We'll figure that out. We'll get back to you on a future podcast about whether or not
you broke
I really
my mind
want to
on
jump
that
through
one.
all the hoops to do that. I know. That's what I'm good at. I come up with the crazy questions. Anyway, so all of that to say, as always, talk to Matt and I if you have questions. If you're a veteran, even in this case, the one time that you might be able to get a better interest rate is if you're a non-veteran and you are able to assume a loan where the interest rate might be lower. So anyway, as always, if you have... I have one other question before we wrap it up. Spouses of veterans, are there special things that they're able to do?
Yeah. So if they are... If the veteran is deceased because of something service-connected, it can't be like, oh, they died in a fiery car crash on the home front, but like actually something associated with being at war or whatever, then the veteran that's surviving has the same VA benefits from a home buying standpoint as their deceased spouse did. It's obviously, thankfully, a rare circumstance that that's the case, because our track record with getting people home safely is pretty solid. But in those situations, that's one of the ways that the government tries to take care of the surviving spouse in the absence of their former military provider there.
So anyway, hope you enjoyed our conversation about assumable mortgages. Always, we're trying to give you questions and things to ask to see if something could be right for you. Whether you're a seller that might be wanting to let somebody assume your mortgage, and of course, a buyer who wants to assume a mortgage, things are always more complicated than they seem, or they sometimes sound, especially when your friends throw words out there and say, hey, why don't you just try to assume somebody's mortgage? So anyway, as always, as we teach you guys, we're here to help you make smart moves, smooth moves, and moves that are best for you. So when you have questions like these, come to Matt and I, and between us, we will help you figure it out and help you make the best offers possible based on your circumstances and walk you through everything. So thanks again for enjoying and watching our podcast, Smart Moves, and we can't wait to be back with you for the next one.